back again for soldering wire to sheet. This is the piece that I twisted. The challenge of soldering twisted wire now is it doesn't touch flat all the way along, but we're going to go ahead and try soldering that down. I just want to talk to you a little bit about wire. I've shown you how to straighten it before, but pliers are really wonderful to give you some designs. And so one of the things that I like to do with my flat nose pliers is kind of make zigzags. And then I have to make sure that it's going to lay down flat on the surface. And this is nickel silver wire that likes to be very springy, but I'm going to take my plastic mallet and I'm going to hammer it on both sides. And then if it doesn't lay flat, it's not going to solder. But the good news is after it gets partially soldered down, you can go back in and you can tap it down and re-solder it. So, am I going to put all of these on here?
We can do that, or we can have another example here.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Let me put this one on first. And then the other thing that I like to do is I like to make little balls and solder those on. So I'm going to save this for that, and then we'll go with this. So I'm going to take my wire cutters and I'm going to cut a couple of pieces that are about the same length so that I can make balls that are the same size. Another way to do that I learned from Lori Talcott is that you can make jump rings, and then the jump rings are, when you cut them, they're all the same length and your beads will all be exactly the same. I'm kind of at the point in my life where I eyeball everything. So I've got my wire. I'm going to clean my metal. I'm going to think about those three things I have to take into consideration. And one of those is the types of metal. So I've got brass and nickel silver, which both don't conduct heat very well. I'm going to try to finish this mountain range. Should we have the Olympics here?
Sure.
So we need a taller Olympic, Mount Olympus. We're so fortunate to live where we live. And then this is right into the ocean. There we go. Okay. So you notice that I did flip this over and kind of ran with my Scotch-Brite to clean it. Another smart thing to do is before you start bending something up is to clean it before you shape it so you don't lose the distortion on it that's on there. Okay, so I look at this nickel silver and I see it as being, I don't know, maybe a 25th of the brass. So I know that I'm going to have to do a lot more heating on the brass than the wire, because it'll all go up to the wire and it won't stick. So I'm going to use a tripod and I'm going to set it up like this, and I'm going to try to make it level, as level as I can. And I'm going to take my flux and I'm going to flux wherever you want the solder to flow is where your flux has to be. Okay. And then I'm going to plan ahead and I'm going to put some flux on these little pieces here, because I'm going to ball these up and then I'm going to solder them down. And when I ball them up, they're going to have a flat bottom on them, and then I'm going to put some solder on them and then stick them on there. But the first thing I need to do is find my medium solder and my scissors, and I need to cut chips again. So we're going to get a chance to see how wire balls up and melts. And I'm going to take my solder chips and I'm going to do like I always do. I'm going to put a solder chip on each end of the solder joint. And I'm going to only put solder chips on the outside of the curves. And I can see that this is not sitting down. So I could take it off and flatten it. Or I can solder down what's here and then I can tap it down and resolder it, which is what I think I'm going to do. Because I'm going to guess that I would have to anneal this nickel silver to get it to do its thing. And so you can see I'm putting my solder chips on the outside of curves. Easier to clean up. I'm going to cut a few more of these. Because I'm going to need them for my little beads. Okay. And I'm going to, I think, solder the wire down first. I'm going to take those bigger tweezers that I have, and as the solder flows, I'm going to push down. It's a little tricky to do when you're first learning, but it helps you see that you can like alter things in the process of soldering. So I'm going to go ahead and light my torch. It's a little bit bigger piece of metal than we've used before, so I'm going to go with the bigger flame, which will be a little bit noisier, which means you might not hear me as well. I'm going to put it in my left hand so that my dominant hand has my tweezers in it. Going to heat from underneath, trying to dry it out. So the flux is turning clear on the brass. Not so much, I guess it is on the nickel silver too. And I'm heating the whole piece, not just where the solder is and the wire. And you can see that the flux is starting to go clear, which means I can push that solder chip back. And I can push that one back to where it needs to be. I also weld, but I was told by my welding teacher that my weld joints are cold because I take too long heating things up. And you don't need to do that with steel pieces. But with silver soldering, it's like taking it, time is on your side because the metal's going to heat up. And so I'm going to start at this end, and I saw the solder flow. And I'm going to work my way down. I just saw it flow again. And you see that this is up. So maybe I can push it down a little. The thing about holding it down is I have to hold it down and then pull the flame away for it to stick. And then let's get that one to flow. So you notice I never came up from the top. I could. Now I am going to come up from the top now and try to drag that solder down along this wire. But do you see how red hot that solder or the wire's getting? And then I have to remember that it gets really hot at the end. That's when you melt things. So I did not get all of this tacked down, but I can pickle it and I can clean it and reflow it. But now before I do that, I'm going to tap it down and make everything make contact. But if nothing more, it teaches you that if it's not making contact, it's not going to flow. So let's move down to the table here. And I'm going to melt this nickel silver on the fireboard. It's going to ball up. As soon as it goes from being yellowish to orange, I'm going to flip it upside down. As there's a flat spot that's taken on the contour of the board. If I squeeze it now, it's going to change shape. If I let it go orange, I can then pull it away, turn it upside down, and then put solder on that spot. That's interesting. Okay, so now I'm going to pull away, let it go to orange, flip it upside down, and then I'm going to take my little solder pieces that are going to look almost as big as these guys, and I'm going to melt solder on them. And because I've got flux on my solder, I don't need to put the solder on the piece. And did you see how it just flipped right over? Got itself right onto that solder. And then I've got one more piece of solder, I hope. Oh, and then now I've got the problem of my tweezers being hotter than my... Okay, there we go. Flipped over. Okay, so I'm going to pick this up. I'm going to find a spot on here that's clean. And I'm going to set my bead on it. If I had a design in mind, I probably would pickle this. But I'm just going to put these. This is just fun practice. And now I'm going to come back in from underneath. I think you can hear that torch difference of what I'm doing. And now I need to reheat. And nickel silver is one of those metals that doesn't conduct heat very well, and it also is very springy. So we're challenging you guys here this time with some, but you'll be using the nickel silver for pinbacks, so you're going to need to get used to working with it. Works really well for the springy part of a pinback or a clasp. So I got those 3 little dots that I want to solder on here. I have to heat up the whole piece. I probably could come from the top now. And this torch tip I think needs cleaning. And so now I'm going to just work around that bead, not really directly on it. But I'm going to heat it up enough to see if I can get it to flow and stick. And usually I can tell by the color. There we go, I think I just did that. Come over to this one of the metal. And sometimes it'll just suck down a little bit and you can see it move. Notice I'm watching out for the wire so I don't melt the wire. Did it go?
The one closer than they did.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's weird. I wasn't even over there. So if I don't know if it's on there or not, I think it is. They're both down. Okay. So one of the things people hate about nickel silver is it's dirty. And now we're looking at this and going, oh my goodness, it's filthy and it's dirty. When we throw it into the water, make sure again that you just drop it in. And then when we pull this out of the pickle, that nickel silver is going to be a copper color. But these are soldered on. You can leave them as balls, or after they come out of the pickle and you clean and dry them, we can hammer them down flat if you want not to have the sphere shape that's on it. The ends are soldered down. I'm going to try to get my fingernail underneath some of this to see if it's down. I don't think it's soldered here, and I don't think it's soldered there. So after it comes out of the pickle, I will make sure that we film me resoldering it again. Okay.